Good morning, and welcome to First Church Unitarian of Littleton, Massachusetts, online, and happy Easter. My name is Lezli Whitehouse. I currently have the honor of serving as one of the co-chairs on the standing committee here at FCU. In our community matters this week, we have a couple of important topics. From our Racial Justice Action Committee, RJAC, we must acknowledge what the white media has not seemed to highlight. People of color, especially people who happen to be Black, are contracting and dying from COVID-19 in far greater numbers than people who happen to be white. For more insight or information on this issue, please check with our Community Matters or anyone on the RJAC. From the office staff, if you are on a committee, it's time to gather the information of the wonderful works of your team for submission to the annual report. The deadline is Friday, May 1st. Reports should be sent as Word files to office@fculittle.org. Thank you, John Ford, for graciously putting together this annual report for this year. So many of you may be wondering, given the unique circumstances these days, about the annual meeting. Rest assured, though abridged, we will be having our annual meeting. We have a talented task force currently preparing for an online format. Please look forward for details coming in the next few weeks. Following the service, please join us for our virtual coffee hour. You will find the Zoom link in your email from the listserv. And again, welcome to First Church Unitarian on this Easter service. Now let us worship. Can see it here. Many apologies. Okay, our call to worship. Alleluia. As the spring sun coaxes lilies and bluebonnets from the soil, let us celebrate that even after murderous betrayal, after days and nights suspended in torture, when all the world has gone dark and we cried out, "Why have you forsaken me?" Even then, there is a sunrise.
even then, there is a resurrection. If we will climb the hill to look for it, if we will roll away the stone and recognize the different shapes that hope can take to walk among us in the returning light. The words of Elena Westbrook. Let us worship. This is the time in the service where we invite you to light a chalice if you have one ready at home. And I'm going to go ahead and light a chalice here. But light a candle or a chalice at home if you have one. And if you know the words of our covenant, you can say them now. Love is the spirit of this church, and service our law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Good morning. Sorry about my delay on the call to worship there, but good morning. Happy Easter. This is, I believe, our 5th online virtual worship service. I'm starting to lose track. My name is Lara Hoke, and I haven't said this in a while, but I am so happy and lucky to be the minister of this awesome congregation. I wish I could see you all, but I'm seeing you in my mind's eye. So good morning, and thank you for being here. A couple of quick thank yous. Thank you to Mike Pillman for helping out this morning on the tech end, and the glitch we just had was me, not him. Thank you to Molly for your playing and for that beautiful song for our gathering video, an original song by Molly called September Sunday. Lovely song. Thank you to Lezli for Community Matters. And I want to say wonderful news, which is that our Director of Religious Education, Vicki Merriam, is doing well, and she's with us this morning. She is back from her procedure, and in just a moment, Vicki can come on for our Time for All Ages. So thank you for being here, and let us worship. Vicki, would you like to come on and share our Time for All Ages?
I'm coming. Here we go. Well, hello, everybody. You can see me, but I can't see you, but I'm certainly thinking of you. And I'm doing pretty good. I'm glad to be back and doing stuff. Last Sunday, Susan stood in for me, which was great. And I loved her story about Elijah, the prophet, and how we need to welcome those who come. So I was thinking today, being Easter, excuse me, we might think about another possible visitor, Jesus. What if Jesus came to your house today? Especially in this time of crisis. You might not even recognize him, but who knows? We never know when someone like Jesus or Elijah might show up. So if Jesus came, because he's always on the road, you know, spreading a message of love and teaching about being kind and caring, what would you do if he showed up? Especially now, what would you do? It's a hard time to greet someone, especially someone you don't know. But there are things you could do. You know, Jesus told the story of the loaves and the fishes. There wasn't enough food, and yet miraculously there was. There was enough for everybody who came to hear him. Would you have enough food to share with him? Could you make some sandwiches and put them on a paper plate and put them out on the picnic table? Or spread a blanket and you could have a picnic together, still keeping your distance? Put some water out because everybody needs water. That might be a way to do it. He told the story of the Good Samaritan. How everyone deserves to be cared for, and everyone has a responsibility to care. What could you do? Could you share some clothing with him? He might need a raincoat with the rain that comes this spring. Or maybe he needs some warm socks. I'm sure you could find something to put out for him. He also told us about the golden rule at the Sermon on the Mount. Excuse me. I'm still a little hoarse from my procedure. He said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. How shall we treat others? Well, the same way we treat ourselves or would want them to treat us. Maybe this is a time for a little laughter. Maybe after you finish your little picnic 6 feet apart, you could tell jokes or stories. I'm sure he'd have plenty of stories to tell. And you could laugh together. Well, we don't know that Jesus will show up. However, Jesus represents everybody that needs help. And he said, love everyone. So what can you do to show love and care for others now? And there are some suggestions that I've sent out to families and in this community matters for you to do. Just remember, it's all about love. And I see we have one family that has joined us. Tatum. Tatum, can you hear me? Do you want to come on? I see you there.
For
Oh,
others.
she's mute
now.
that one, please.
And there are
Mute
some
that. I'll turn it
suggestions.
all the way down. Hi. Come on, my dear.
Hi. This is a time for the kids to share. Hi, guys.
Oh, now we can hear you.
Okay, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Welcome, welcome home. Looking wonderful.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. Thank you. Thank you for the lovely original cards you sent as well.
Yes, you're welcome.
So go ahead.
We have
You
a
go.
little Easter song. May we sing it?
Oh, I would love that.
Good.
Here comes Peter Cottontail, hopping down the bunny trail. Hippity hoppity, Easter's here today.
Lovely. I bet you could just sing that over and over, maybe even a round. I don't know. We need Molly to help us, not me. Do you have anything else you'd like to share individually?
Maddie, would you like to share anything?
No.
Would you like to share a joke? You want to say something? Okay, you can talk to Vicki. Talk to her right there on the screen.
What did the duck say when she dropped her dishes?
I don't know. What did she say?
I hope I didn't quack any. That's the same as crack, but it's just in duck language. Quack.
Right. I love it. That would be a good joke to tell Jesus if he came. And how about you, Riley? Do you have anything you want to share?
Sure. Another joke.
Oh, good.
What is a pirate's favorite type of socks?
Oh, Mama, I have another.
Striped?
Oh.
I don't know.
Argyle.
Arrgh. Very good.
I've got one.
Okay. Go ahead.
Why did the pirate get a new boat?
Why did who get a new boat?
A pirate.
The old one sank?
Because it was on
It
sale.
was in the sea, sailing away with no one in it.
I'm so glad I have you to explain these, Eliza. Nice job. Are you all doing well? Oh, nice bunny. You're hanging in there?
We are.
Bunny
We
too.
are. We miss everybody.
Yeah, me too. But it's nice to see you at least this way.
Yes.
So thank you. You made me laugh. That's a good thing, Elena.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay, bye. I don't think I saw anyone else come on, but those were some pretty good jokes.
Those were awesome jokes. We got a bonus song and we got 3 bonus jokes. That was great. Thanks, guys. And thank you, Vicki. It's great to see you back, and you do look great. All right.
Good to be back.
Awesome.
I wish we were back for real, but
I know. Soon, I hope. Well, it won't be that soon, but
no.
in my mind. Good to see you, Vicki. This is our time for our offering. And this week, it will be for the church again, for the good works of First Church Unitarian in Littleton. And I believe next week we might have another share the plate. But this week, the offering will be taken to serve the good works of First Church Unitarian. And you can, if you have something you'd like to give, if you want to either make a loose offering for the offering plate virtually, or pay a pledge payment, you can either go to the website fculittle.org, and there's a donate button in the top right, or you can mail it in to the church address 19 Foster Street, Littleton, Mass. 01460. A special treat for our offering music offertory. It's a Gregorian chant style piece, and the choir made this while sheltering in place. People recorded their parts individually in their homes, and then our music director, Lozeau, put it together, and it's a real treat. So Mike will cue that up for you now, and maybe we can listen to it twice since it's short.
Ego sum resurrectio et vita, qui credit in me, et siam mortus fuerit vivet, et omnis qui vivit et credit in me, non mori et uri eternum. Ego sum resurrectio et vita, qui credit in me, et siam mortus fuerit vivet, et omnis qui vivit et credit in me, non mori et uri eternum.
Thank you so much, Molly and choir, for making that. That was beautiful. Anytime you want to work on something like that again, please do. That was just really gorgeous. Thank you so much. This being Easter, I actually have a reading before my sermon. I don't do that many readings, you might have noticed, mostly for the sake of time. But I'm going to do a reading this morning, and it reminded me of something that happened to me at the last church I served. There was a guest preacher in, and he wanted to read something from the Bible. So he asked if he could, and get a Bible. And my parishioners were worried that I didn't have a Bible in there. So in spite of possible beliefs to the contrary, I actually have several Bibles in my office at the church and home. In any case, I just thought of that this morning, funny memory. And it's an analog reading and Bible that I have, so I don't have to worry about it coming up on screen. Look at that. Holy Bible. This is one that I found in my office. Doesn't belong to me. I don't know if you can see this, but it's got an inscription from 1974, an inscription 1974 from Reverend Robert Hadley, who served our church for 3 decades. So pretty cool. The reading is from the Gospel of Luke, and it is chapter 24, starting at verse 13. That same day, 2 of Jesus's followers were walking to the village of Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem. As they walked along, they were talking about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things, Jesus himself suddenly came and began walking with them. But God kept them from recognizing Jesus. Jesus asked them, "What are you discussing so intently as you walk along?" They stopped short, sadness written across their faces. Then one of them, Cleopas, replied, "You must be the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about all the things that have happened there in the last few days." "What things?" Jesus asked. "The things that happened to Jesus, the man from Nazareth," they said. "He was a prophet who did powerful miracles, and he was a mighty teacher in the eyes of God and all the people. But our leading priests and other religious leaders handed him over to be condemned to death, and they crucified him. We had hoped he was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. This all happened 3 days ago. Then some women from our group of his followers were at his tomb early in the morning, and they came back with an amazing report. They said his body was missing, and they had seen angels who told them Jesus is alive. Some of our men ran out to see, and sure enough, his body was gone, just as the women had said. Then Jesus said to them, "You foolish people, you find it so hard to believe all that the prophets wrote in the scriptures. Wasn't it clearly predicted that the Messiah would have to suffer all these things before entering his glory?" Then Jesus took them through the writings of Moses and all the prophets, explaining from all the scriptures the things concerning himself. By this time, they were nearing Emmaus and the end of their journey. Jesus acted as if he were going on, but they begged him, "Stay the night with us since it's getting late." So he went home with them. As they sat down to eat, he took the bread and blessed it. Then he broke the bread and gave it to them. Suddenly, their eyes were opened and they recognized him. And at that moment, he disappeared. They said to each other, "Didn't our hearts burn within us as he talked with us on the road and explained the scriptures to us?" And within the hour, they were on their way back to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 disciples and the others who had gathered with them, who said, "The Lord has really risen. He appeared to Peter." Then the 2 from Emmaus told their story of how Jesus had appeared to them as they were walking along the road and how they had recognized him as he was breaking the bread. For my reflection this morning. For those of you who didn't participate in our Maundy Thursday service, and let me just say that you really should have, because it was quite lovely. Not to scold you, but seriously, it was lovely, and thank the participants again. Let me really quickly take you through the basic events of the Holy Week. Last Sunday was Palm Sunday, which was Jesus's triumphant entry into Jerusalem on a donkey. And then Jesus, in that week early on, makes his protest in the temple, turning over the tables of the money changers in disgust. The rest of the week includes the Last Supper, his time of prayer and agony in the garden, the betrayal by Jesus, and the capture, trial, torture, and crucifixion by the Romans. Those of you who were raised as Christians might have learned that each of the Gospels, each of the 4 Gospels, has a somewhat different account of the resurrection event. There are, in effect, 4 different but official resurrection stories. There are some things that all the resurrection stories have in common. Interestingly and surprisingly, they all have in common that it is a woman or combination of women who first comes across the empty tomb. That's pretty interesting that all four Gospels have the women discovering the tomb being empty, since women were not that well relied upon in those times. Another interesting detail is that Mary Magdalene is the only woman who is in every account, all four Gospels. She's there to find the empty tomb. It's pretty hard to harmonize the four Gospel versions of the story of resurrection, but the basics are it's discovered by women that the enormous stone has been rolled away from the tomb, and the women discover the empty tomb, that Jesus is not there where he had been buried, and there's confusion and puzzlement and distress that Jesus is not there. But then eventually they go to tell the disciples. So I want to focus on what happens next. In all four gospel stories, what happens next is that a resurrected Jesus appears to his male followers in some fashion. The story from Luke is the one I shared a moment ago, or part of the story from Luke, commonly referred to as the Road from Emmaus story. The most remarkable thing about this story, of course, is that you have two followers of Jesus. So two men who presumably knew Jesus very well, who knew him intimately, and they're walking and talking with him. It's a 7-mile walk, so a decent length of walk, and they don't recognize him at all during that time. So imagine that, someone you love and knew well has died, and then a few days after they've died, you see them and you don't recognize them. It almost sounds like a strange dream. Dreams are kind of like that. Something that doesn't look quite like what it is in fact that very thing. Like I might dream that I'm in my home and I know it's my home, even though it doesn't look like my home. So there's that eerie, dreamlike quality to the story where you suddenly realize, oh, wait, this person is my dear teacher who died recently. And then when you realize that, zap, he disappears. It's very much like a dream, really. What could it mean that two of Jesus's followers perceived Jesus to be a stranger? The Hebrew scriptures and the New Testament both have stories about the right way to treat strangers. To give just one of many, many examples in the Hebrew scriptures, in Deuteronomy 10:19, it says, "You shall love the stranger, for you were once strangers in the land of Egypt." So there's this understanding that you should repay the kindnesses which you have received, that you should help as you were helped. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus himself tells a parable of the sheep and the goats, saying how righteous it is to feed the hungry and welcome them. He says at Matthew 25:35, "I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me." Jesus is, in a way, expanding on the ideas of hospitality to strangers found in his own scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, of course. But the Road to Emmaus story takes it a step further. The Emmaus story says, be respectful to the stranger, give the stranger ultimate regard, not just because that's the right way to be hospitable, but also because anyone you meet can be an encounter with God or the divine. Any stranger you meet could be effectively God or the great mystery of the universe incarnate. Mahatma Gandhi said, "Everyone has a piece of the truth." And that's a big claim, that everyone has a piece of the truth. But the Road to Emmaus story says that anyone you might meet could express divine truth. That's pretty profound. Reminds me a little bit, I don't know about you, it reminds me a little bit of that mid-90s pop song by Joan Osborne, who sang, "What if God was one of us, just a slob like one of us, just a stranger on the bus trying to make his way home." And indeed, in the Emmaus story, God could be one of us. just somebody you see along the way. So be prepared to see the divine face and meet the divine in everyone. Our Unitarian heritage tells us, in fact, that the spark of divinity is to be found in everyone. That's what the Transcendentalists believed. And here you see Ralph Waldo Emerson, Margaret Fuller, and Henry David Thoreau. The Emmaus story gives us a wonderful Christian version of this sentiment. The divine can be found in everyone that you meet. Another interesting thing about this story is to think about the moment that the two disciples actually do finally recognize Jesus. They recognize him not when he's talking about theology and the scriptures and all that. They recognize him when he breaks bread. What does that mean? Well, right now I'm talking about theology to you, and I read some scriptures to you, and hopefully there's something to be said for this exercise. I enjoy it, and I hope you do too. But speaking for myself, when I think of each of you, I remember moments when we connected personally, when we had a human conversation about something. We talked about something maybe real, maybe down to earth in life, something happening in the here and now of the everyday. That's often where connection happens. It doesn't always happen in the world of moral concepts. The moment when we meet, you and I, you or you and anyone you know, can be real life, the basics, perhaps even breaking bread together, so to speak. And I just recently thought of the fact that the word companion comes from the Latin words com for together, or with, together with, com, and panion, it's that pane word like el pan in Spanish or il pane in Italian, bread. Together with bread, companion, interesting word. Of course, breaking bread for Christians has a specific meaning of communing with Jesus or God incarnate. Do this in remembrance of me, Jesus said at the Last Supper. And so it makes perfect sense that his followers would recognize him as he performed the ritual which he so recently taught them. But this could hint at something deeper. Could it be that in moments of deep sharing, we not only see the face of God or the spark of divinity in someone else, but maybe we even see something more than that? Maybe when we have those real life moments of deep connection, are we seeing through the veils of life to something more true? That is precisely the moment of the magical, mystical connection, seeing the real person behind the persona. And there's something else that happens when the disciples recognize Jesus as he's breaking bread. Namely, he suddenly disappears. What could that mean? Maybe it means that mystical experiences are fleeting, that it's almost impossible to experience the mystical for more than mere moments. William James was a great psychologist and wrote one of my favorites, the classic book, Varieties of Religious Experience. He thought that transiency was one of the major characteristics of mystical experiences. And in fact, James's idea of transiency was described by one writer this way: mystical experiences are fleeting in linear time, though they seem to be eternal. Most last a few seconds, some perhaps up to 10 minutes. So maybe the quick disappearance of Jesus is a sign that it's a mystical encounter rather than a literal one, perhaps. Or maybe there's another message. Maybe the message is pay attention, because wondrous discoveries and incredible encounters could happen at any time, but not if you're daydreaming through life. So pay attention. Those are the things I thought about, pondering the story of Jesus appearing on the road to Emmaus. And one more thing. The Emmaus story is, at its core, a resurrection story. Jesus has died, and according to the Emmaus story, he rises. He's resurrected. A Unitarian Universalist modern interpretation might focus on psychological or mystical elements of such an experience, whereas a traditional Christian interpretation would probably focus more on resurrection as a bodily or literal happening. But either way, the followers of Jesus on the road to Emmaus are distraught. They're in despair. Their teacher, their leader, the man they have decided to follow has just been brutally killed. And yes, they heard the amazing report of the women, and they can hardly believe it. And yes, some of the men confirmed that the body was missing from the tomb. But the two men on the road to Emmaus are clearly still upset. They are focused more on the traumatic death than the amazing report of the missing body. But in an instant, they both realize that the stranger with them is none other than Jesus himself. Resurrection. Out of despair and emptiness can come something miraculous. Out of death can come a new kind of life. So, in closing, that's the beauty of the Easter story for all of us, even if you don't believe in a literal bodily resurrection of Jesus. Just when things are at their most bleak, something new and wonderful can happen. A metaphorical death can end in new life. In these times that we're experiencing today, Easter 2020, Easter in the time of pandemic, it's the end of life as we have known it. And though that is scary and disorienting, maybe something unexpected and wonderful, maybe something even better than life as we have known it could eventually come. Old ways must die for new, better ways to be born. But it's not our Easter time quite yet, not in the context of this pandemic. We have rolled away the stone. We have found a shocking surprise. It's scary. It's disorienting. Some of us might even be feeling despair. Some of us might have even experienced a personal loss already in this pandemic, and no doubt more of us will. It is Easter on the Christian calendar in the Western world of Christendom. And I can proclaim that I do believe that the spark of divine is in everyone. And I believe that our Easter time is up the road. We have to trust and earn the trust of others, but we have to be there for each other. We have to insist on action for the common good. Life has never seemed more fragile to me than it does right now. And community has never seemed more precious than it does to me right now. Just about the only time I get out of the home anymore is to walk our dog. And in the past, I would have come across strangers walking my dog and there would have been barely interaction. But now, every encounter with somebody out there feels so special and precious to me. I don't take anyone I see for granted anymore. And I don't think they take me for granted either. We smile, we acknowledge each other. Every life I encounter is singular and divine. And every road is the road to Emmaus. May our roads to Emmaus lead us to a resurrection and a better life for all. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. This week for our benediction and our postlude, a bit of a treat. You will be seeing the benediction and the postlude from last Easter. It's a tradition of First Church Unitarian in Littleton to have a pickup choir led by Molly and the usual choir. Others from the congregation join them in singing Handel's Alleluia chorus. So we're going to share with you last year's benediction and see the gathering, which is part of the fun of the pickup choir, and then we'll hear the song. So I invite you, if there's somebody there with you, to hold hands. And if not, I invite you to clasp your own hands and feel that warmth. And now, enjoy. Friends, indeed, it is my belief that we are made like Jesus. Like Jesus, we have the life within us. Like Jesus, we can ask ourselves to live lives of integrity, working for the least of these, helping everyone in need, loving our neighbor and knowing that our neighbor means everyone. May we indeed rise to the light within. Happy Easter. Amen.
Amen.